Well, Heavenly Gracious God, I thank you for the time we have today. I thank you for these wonderful, beautiful residents. I thank you for your faithfulness to each and every one of us all. I pray right now that if there's anything in our minds and our hearts that causes us any disturbance, Father, that right now you just deal with such things. Today, as we come together and discuss the business of Edgewater, I pray that we do that in a loving and kinding way, that we express ourselves and come up with resolutions that benefits us all so that we continue to live in love and kindness. So, Lord, be in this place today as we speak. I pray that the meditations of our heart and the words of our mouth be acceptable in your sight in every single way. I pray that we continue to just smile, even when smiling is difficult, that we continue to love, even when loving is difficult, but most importantly, that you continue to help us get through our days in the way you called us to. So, Lord, thank you for today. We ask that in your name. Amen. Thank you, George.
Thank you. So, I know it's late in coming, but welcome to 2023. I was actually out, and I have a new son. And what I was doing, I didn't have a PowerPoint. I was going to show you a picture. I'd be happy to show anyone that would like to see a picture after they ask the director meeting. But I have a nice picture of my little tiny man, and he looks just like a little tiny old man. And my daughter, I'm holding him. So everything's going well. We're settling in. And everyone's healthy and happy and exhausted. But other than that, I think that's expected. So a lot to go over, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions. But I wanted to just first acknowledge the loss of an employee recently that many of you are likely aware of, and that's Daniel Polo. Daniel worked for us at the gate. Wonderful young man, and I'm always so pleasant and kind and just delightful to talk with and work with. And a very untimely passing of both he and his mother. So a big tragedy for the family. We are having a reception event here on Thursday, the 9th. So next Thursday, the 9th. So we do ask if you have any questions, you can certainly check in with Barnabas. But any loss is difficult. I lost my mother last year, and I knew I was going to lose my mother. She was ill, and that was difficult. But such a young life taken so quickly of a young man who took very good care of his mother. He took her to the doctor often, and just very tragic. And we are working with his brothers and the family with the resources we have to help out as well. So I know that many of you may be wanting to ask George, have you made a decision for the executive director for the Edgewater campus? And I'm closer, very much closer. As I indicated, I was out. I was out for a bit, and I was able to conduct some interviews. I have a couple of more interviews to conduct, but I really expect to be at a decision point by the end of the week or the beginning of next. I do have an internal candidate with ACTS as well, and there were the last glimpse I looked at the website that we use, there were over 117 applicants, which obviously a lot of those are not qualified, but you have to look to see if they're qualified or not. So in going through that list, it has taken quite a while, and some professionals perceive their abilities to be stellar and able to do any and everything. But I was able to just go through that list and find out from those who would have some history or background or experience and what we do. So I am down to some final decision making, a couple of more interviews. I actually just on the phone this morning with one of my counterparts who sent another resume to me just through networking, said here's someone that they were looking in another region actually. So I just want to make sure no stone is unturned, and also that we find the right fit for the community. Not only from the residents and culture and just the spirit of Edgewater, but also the team. You have an outstanding team of department heads, and there's so many things going right here that we really need to find someone that can take the helm and lead forward and not drag the anchor, using some nautical terms. But I'm very optimistic. I feel good about the pool of candidates, and I did have some dialogue yesterday morning and again this morning with Jonathan Grant, I've been reviewing applicants with him. So I expect, again, by the end of this week or beginning of next, to be able to provide some definitive details to you. Speaking of Jonathan, he was here last week. I saw his list of meetings. I know everyone in this room might have met with Jonathan from the list I saw. That's not true, obviously, but he was very busy meeting with individuals. And also, Jeremy Neely was here the prior week. I report to Jeremy. He's the Senior Vice President of Operations. And then Jeremy reports to Jonathan. So you met my boss and my boss's boss, and they were here last week, spending a significant amount of time on campus, making themselves available to residents, but also staff members as well. I did personally thank both of them for affording me the opportunity to take some time off at a very difficult time of the year to take time off. I actually was doing triage on emails on Sunday, and I got it down to 450 emails. And that was going through a lot of processes, and that was checking mail while I was off too. I kind of worked with one hand in the fire a little bit. So it's the time of year. Tis the season. Just a lot of closing out 2022 and opening up 23. There's just a lot going on. Culinary updates. I just have a few departmental updates. I don't see Darren in the room. There you are, Darren. Darren, I'm sure you got a good throwing arm, but don't throw anything at me. We did talk yesterday. We had lunch together, and I talked with Jonathan just about some specifics regarding guests and guests for dinner. We're going to return to having your guests join you at dinner. Okay? It is what it is from a staffing perspective in many ways. We continue to recruit and train. There continues to be some turnover challenges. So it's an area we will continue to focus on. But the reality, when the dust settles, we really believe that one more person sitting at your table isn't going to tax us beyond reason, with an exception. If we open it on Friday and everybody brings a guest, that's going to be a mess. So what I didn't talk with Darren about is just how to triage the upfront. So I would like to start on Friday for permitting you to bring guests. And I know you have the reservation program, but I would ask that if you have more than one guest or more than two guests, check in with Darren. And they may be following up we're just making sure we serve everyone, is what we're doing. But just check in. We don't expect that everyone's going to have a guest on Friday, but we have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So we just want to make sure that we are prepared. So Friday for dinner, we will open for guests, and going forward, we expect there shouldn't be interruptions, but we know your number, and we'll be able to track you down if there are any changes. Next, price adjustments. I have a letter on my desk. It was written by Patrick Plumador. He's the Vice President of Culinary Services and a plethora of other areas that he oversees. But he's been working with each of the regions and communities specifically about menu pricing and pricing items. And it varies by community across the company. So some communities are impacted more so than others, but we're right-sizing some of the pricing so that we're sure that our prices cover the cost of the meals that we're delivering. So there'll be price adjustments. A detailed letter is coming out. It will not affect you if you use a swipe. So your meal cost is going to remain, under the contracted cost. It won't affect that, but it will affect, or it can affect, a guest. So if you have a guest coming, the guest meal prices are going to vary. And also the meal cost in the bistro. We're making sure the bistros and cafes across the company are actually appropriately pricing menu items. Again, some communities are in a better position than others, and there's really very little change. Others hadn't changed prices for many, many years, and they really needed to make some drastic changes. So I have a letter that's on my desk. I was reviewing it before I walked in, and the letter is going to be coming out before the 15th. The letter was dated February 15th that I was looking at. So it'll come out soon. I'll have details. We'll talk in more detail about it. But a big part of this and the next topic was a portion of the way we were able to keep the rates at 7.5%, which I know I was here yesterday, and someone said 7.5%, and you took this away? 7.5% was hard to get to, is the reality, and it was to maintain what we have. But a big portion of making sure that we could have a 7.5% increase and not a 10% increase or other number was some of these areas that we covered to make sure that our pricing is fair market pricing and covers the cost of the service. So more detail will come out. The next, you're going to receive a letter. I would ask, I've shared what I know about that. I don't know anything community specific, nor does Darren at this point. I shared what I know. The letter is dated for the 15th. It'll come out around then, and we'll have an opportunity to talk specifics once we implement specifics. The implementation date is April 1st. So there is a time frame between the notification and then some community-specific discussions and then implementation, and it will not impact your swipes and your cost of food using your contract. And the last area for culinary, and this again ties into price savings, I included this in my dialogue with you in our fourth quarter town hall, and that was about the plastic reusable containers. We used those during the pandemic because paper was either not available, and the cost, if you could get it, the cost went through the roof. And then when the dust settled, access to paper, was sustained again. But the reality was just throwing away money doesn't make sense. So the going green aspect, and ironically, those containers are green. It impacts communities a little differently again. We were going to dance. It impacts each community a little differently, and I'll explain that. Some communities, you place your to-go order ahead of the evening, and then you go to a location and pick up a brown bag, like a takeout. You actually go through your bistro line and put your meal together. So it makes it a little easier and less unsightly in the way we collect those containers back, which I met with Darren and Jonathan yesterday, and we have a strategy by which those who come for their takeouts will be able to drop off their other containers so that we can clean those. And we have a location that's before the service line. It's out of sight, but not completely, obviously. But we ask your patience. It's much better condition than other communities that actually are collecting them in similar ways that as you used to, where you set it out the door, and they're in the hallway, which is really unacceptable. But it's still a process. What we do know is once we implement it, if we have better ideas or something is more convenient and less unsightly, we will certainly do what we can. But it's important that process starts because it'll save, again. Darren shared that he has a little bit of extra inventory of some paper that we're using now. But as soon as we start that, we won't have to order. We'll be able to maintain a paper supply for emergency, and we won't have to order more. But it's important that we do it. Your part is to be sure to bring them back. And there'll be some instructions, like I know initially, for example, we said they were microwave safe. Well, they may be, but there's a variable. How long are you going to put it in the microwave? And what are you going to have in it while you're cooking it? So we had some that came back damaged, warped, melted, etc. So it's important. We're going to have some very specific instructions and support. Like it'll be part of a regular dialogue such as this as a reminder. But those who take out, it's going to be very important that you bring those back because replacing those, as you can imagine, is far more expensive than buying paper. So that's that bit of news. I know Darren told me the start date. And Darren, do you remember? Next Monday. Monday the 12th. No. Monday is 3rd, 4th, 6th. Monday the 6th. Okay. I was on the Chinese calendar. I'm sorry. Monday the 6th. Jumping topics, but this is an important one and a bit of a shift in timing. The Olympiacs, which Edgewater did a phenomenal job in the 2022 Olympiacs. And the Olympiacs this year is being pushed to spring. It'll be a spring event. And the date is May 17th. May 17th. You're going to be hearing a lot more information about the different events and opportunities to participate. It'll be a lot of fun. Here's the opportunity. I say opportunity because it's either here's the catch Or here's the opportunity. It's going to be in Pensacola, Florida. The Olympiacs will be held at Azalea Trace, which, if you were aware, last year, Azalea Trace in Westminster loaded a bus and came to Vero Beach, Florida for the Olympiacs last year. And they did that before the pandemic. They had a trip as well. So yes, it's a week-long trip. It's on the 17th. That's a Wednesday. And I believe you leave on a Tuesday and you come back on a Friday, but it could be a Monday and an overnight stay. But we will have details. I would look at it as an opportunity. You know, if you'd like to see another community, the Panhandle in May is gorgeous as well. But May 17th, mark your calendars. I know you're going to be putting the events together. You'll know which events to prepare for. But that'll be it's an intra-community opportunity. So Indian River and St. Andrews will also be traveling to Azalea Trace. The travel for these is actually sponsored by the foundation. It's through donor dollars. So for those of you who are wondering about that 7.5% increase and say, that's what you're doing with that money. No, the reality is that travel is actually funded by donor dollars who donated to be able to have these events collectively such as that. Historically, what we had done is those communities, there was several years ago, we had Westminster Village, they're about 45 minutes to an hour from Pensacola. Westminster Village and what's our community in Huntsville? Magnolia Trace. They drove, so we had 3 communities come together between 2 regions, and we call it the Flora-Bama Games. But it's not the same. I mean, it was nice to have guests from another region, but it's really great when we get our whole region together. So looking forward to that. Please mark your calendars. We were very careful to try to miss dates. I mean, originally we tried April, and Passover week, was there, and there was another community had a gala, and then early May, Azalea Trace had several events planned, so it was really hard to find the 17th. I know it likely interferes with something somewhere, but it's the best date that we could really find to meet the masses. Now, this was just something that was submitted as a question, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't know if others had the same question, but the perception was that St. Andrews had clinic hours on Saturdays and Sundays, or Saturdays or Sundays. They do not. They have the same 5-day clinic hours we do, but the reality is sometimes Cheryl's here on Saturday, so just the same way, there could be days where the clinic has personnel in it at St. Andrews because of other duties as assigned, especially when we have COVID outbreaks and different issues that we're dealing with. But they have a 5-day schedule just like Edgewater. By the way, Barnabas, I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to do some research to Barnabas hugs versus COVID outbreaks. Because as I'm hugging Barnabas, he comes over and says, I haven't hugged everyone yet. And I'm just saying, Barnabas, I'm going to have Cheryl look into that and run some statistics. Oh, no, I had a comment here. The comment here is, you're so far up in the air, it doesn't matter. Right. Good observation. Good save. Yes. Okay. Now, this was another good recommendation that was made in a similar area with regards to health care, access to services, etc. And it reminds me of when I was an executive director at Indian River. But the question was, actually, I want to make sure I get all the details in this one. Okay, the question was, would it be possible to have 1 hour a month for Edgewater management to go over benefits? I think that's a great idea. I don't know the hour a month, how it's done isn't as concerning or challenging as that it is done. But there are so many things, so many opportunities that you're likely not aware of because there are so many as well, but also from experience. And when I was an executive director, as I opened with, at Indian River Estates, we had a program that the residents named, they called it Who Pays What. So it was the chair of their health services committee His name was Byron Fink. I remember Byron. His wife was in Willowbrook Court, and so his mind was around, well, what's covered, what's not? How's this done? How's that done? And so that's why he called it the who pays what. So we put together a presentation. Then every year, actually I was the administrator. I was not the executive director, I was the administrator. Every year we would do the presentation for all residents. And then many communities have done this. So I can work with Melissa. I know that there's a presentation that Joya used when she was here. Joya Murata was your administrator at one point, and she had given that presentation here. So we have one. And it really fits at all communities with the exception of the professionals that deliver the service. The services are all the same. But it was called Who Pays What. I came up with a tag, and just off the top of my head is, did you know? So there could be, as a part even of the Ask the Director meeting, that a department head or the executive director give a few did you knows just to keep you filled in. The reality, and we really should do at least annually, that who pays what approach, whatever it's called, but to go over what's covered in the contract and how it enacts. The reality, though, is most residents that attend, you listen or you hear where you're impacted the most at that time. So in other words, it doesn't matter how many times you've seen the presentation. Every time you see it, you hear and see more, or from a different perspective, because your needs, or your mind, or your friend's needs, or the dinner talk last night was in another area that you're focused on. So there are presentations that exist, and they'll be quite easy to modify for Edgewater. But in the meantime, I believe we can also do a did you know approach to some of those other non-healthcare related, maybe they're food related contractually, just little bullets of information that you can, as takeaways. And those could even be posted, the did you knows of the month or week or whatever. So I can work with the team on some of those. I'd love to collaborate with Myra and the board on some of the dialogue as well. So just because I know there are a lot of questions that individuals have, but just so that we're hitting the nail on the head with regards to what we're providing. And the other comment on this was about bistro guests. So we've answered the guest question. Okay, the budget process. So, and my mind is on capital budgets, and that's what I wanted to talk about. But I want to briefly talk about the process that gets to the capital budget. So the way the budget process works, the census of communities, as you can imagine, the incoming residents that are budgeted for the year, or planned for the year, drive the revenue, which drives the opportunities for the budgeting, including the operational budget that pays operations day to day, and then the capital budget. So, and then the move-in process, also the number of apartments that are moving in, also gives us the math that we need to say how many need to be renovated and what the average cost of that is, and that comes off the top. The remainder is what we use to fund capital projects across the campus. So it's a process. I made it sound easy. It's a process that takes time. We're at the final stages of approving the capital budget. And I really thought I would be in a position now to share more of the global perspective of what's going to be covered in 2023. But I will, when we come together for the next Ask the Director, be able to share that. And I won't say in great detail. I'll be able to give you the projects that are planned for the year. Planned is important because what's happening, construction costs are up about 20+%. So labor and other issues with regards to just operating, we know they're inflated in some areas more than others, but construction has been outrageous. Hopefully for us, the interest rate increases will also slow down general construction, which will slow down volume, which will help us with pricing. That will take time. So by the end of the year, potentially. But I don't think labor costs are going to relax. I think material costs may come down, but the material has been more of the variable for us. But I'm mentioning that because when I give you a capital overview, like here's what we have planned for this year, we also prioritize them. And some of those may be delayed because they have to pay the increased cost of the others that were committed and moving forward already. But I'd be happy to share those with you. We'll hold to the the regularly scheduled Ask the Director meeting, and I will include a list of those projects that are planned for the year. Next, I have been working on, I received actually on last Thursday, and I have the slides almost completed for your first quarter town hall. It'll be a presentation on the satisfaction survey that a number of you completed last year. Participation was relatively low. Typical community participation was around 50%, 50 to 55%. So I hope those of you who responded on the behalf of the masses. But I do have those slides that we're working on. Just the way they were presented was very difficult to see and understand. So I've cleaned them up to make them easier to present and be understandable. But the schedule for that town hall date will be out soon. We have some flexibility with that, so I can pick a date that works for the community. Typically, I would have to work a date that works for the regional vice president as well, who has a portion of that presentation. But I'm wearing both hats, so that makes it easier to schedule for here. So I have the presentation. It's just a matter of now I'm finishing the formatting, and I imagine it likely the second or third week of February, so 3 weeks from now. And it'll be the week after the Ask the Director meeting. It was when the town hall will be. And the last on my list to share was just Ellen shared with me that we have the grand opening for the shuffleboard, or reopening of the shuffleboard, and that is at 9:30 to 11:30 on Thursday. And there'll be games and food and fun. Cornhole will be set up. So we do encourage you. The weather's beautiful. Enjoy it while we can to get outside a bit. But that's Thursday at 9:30 to 11:30 at the shuffleboard. Do we have a roving mic? Okay. I'd like to open for questions now. See if there are areas that I can help with. We have a question up front here.
Please remind, just keep your questions to one question at a time so everyone can share, please.
I'm a little confused about the guests. Currently, we can have guests in the bistro where they get food online, and then guests can sit in the winery. That's current. Are you saying that we could have guests in the dining room?
I am. Guests everywhere. So we're moving beyond this segregated seating for guests.
So it's still 6 at a table.
Correct.
But we can have guests in the dining room.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And again, if you have a large group or party, I know if you know how to make the reservations online, it's still recommended to talk directly to the staff to set that up.
What is the status of the completion of Building A, the furniture, the rehanging of paintings?
The status of Building A, I don't have a high degree of detail off the top of my head, but I do know the furniture was selected and approved for order and funded. So that's the delivery date I don't have, but I don't think there were any long waits for the furniture. What I will do for the A building residents is I will get those details together and post those in the elevator, the schedule as we expect it. But obviously it could change, but it'll give you what we know to date. So we'll do that.
I have the microphone. Is there any chance that the clinic hours can be extended? It's only open from 8 to 12 and 1 to 4. That seems a little short-timed for some of the residents, especially since there's not anyone specific who can answer the calls in the evening. So I think we need to look at that and see if there's something that can be done to meet the needs of the residents.
Thank you. I'd be happy to look into the clinic hours. Increasing clinic hours would increase cost. And also, if it's an emergency, or if it's just a general clinic visit, I would urge you to try to make it between those hours it's open. But what I've seen for the volume of activity in the clinic generally doesn't justify adding cost for that occasional visit. So, but I'd be happy to talk with Cheryl about the hours. But I'm really thinking it has more to do with, if you have an emergency, as that be intended to, that's very important. But a general clinic visit, I would encourage you to work between those hours that we've already established. And if you can't for some reason, talk with me. Come, let me know specifics. We don't need to share those here, and we can talk about it.
I'm very pleased to hear that we're going to have the guests now in the dining room. But, our culinary workers really are pushed to the limits at the moment. And especially the servers, we never see in the kitchen, but sometimes it's a long time getting dinner. And with extra people in, I hope that you would anticipate that we may need some more help there and that's budgeted for.
Now, I can appreciate the perspective. That's why I mentioned the bump. I hope everybody doesn't go home and call all your friends and say, join us on Friday. The reality is, if we have a peppering of guests across the room, it doesn't really change a whole lot. It can, but it doesn't change our staffing needs. And we talked some statistics yesterday at lunch, but to have 3 or 4 guests along throughout the evening in a dining room is not a big impact. Holidays are another question. We're still going to need to be very sensitive because of the popularity of the dining here in the holidays. That's going to be unique. But I can appreciate the perspective. We really don't believe there are going to be issues. That said, we also are working, and this is beyond what I shared earlier, but we're working on a matrix that helps with the food delivery service across the board, and that is in all communities. And I don't want to get really deep into the mud, but it's a food delivery process that should enhance service at the resident table. That's the process. The communication of it started last week. We had a call last week to talk about some of it. One of the next steps gets into the actual process in the dining room. So it's just, instead of doing things as we've done in the past and expecting a different outcome, my message is we have a new process that we're implementing that really should help with food delivery service and timing. Right. Are we continuing to build the wait staff? We are, but that category of employee, it used to be in all ACTS communities, it was a coveted opportunity to be a server in a dining room as a teenager. Now we have, and it's a different mindset, but we have applicants for servers who are just fine with going through a drive-through somewhere and maybe taking a gun in the face, and I'm saying that because you've seen the news like it's different. Being a server in an ACTS community is like working with your family. You're putting your life on the line for an extra quarter or $1, or I don't know what they're offering, but it's a different marketplace, and it's very challenging recruiting. And it used to be marketing was like we could put a brochure in the local high school football directory, and the parents would see it, and we would be able to market, and they'd say, oh, you can get a job at ACTS. Every teenager has a computer in the palm of their hands, and they're savvy with Facebook, and their Facebook, I'll guarantee if you go on a teenager's Facebook or whatever, I don't know, Facebook's old-fashioned, I guess, Instagram, but you go, they're going to have advertisements for employment, from anything you can imagine in their hand, in the palm of their hand. So we're competing in a different marketplace, but we haven't stopped trying to recruit, and we're still sensitive to who we recruit, which adds to the challenge. It's really the turnover is where we're focused, like not recruiting and losing, but recruiting and keeping. But it's a front burner topic with us, and the intention is to stay fully staffed, but it's remaining a challenge for everything as I've just outlined. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi. Me and my husband, we moved to this community like 1 year ago, and we live in Building C. Unfortunately, we live close to maintenance building and the waste management containers. And I understand we're doing a lot of renovation here, but the garbage is unbelievable. I believe you received my pictures.
Yes, I did.
So my question is, how long time before they're going to clean that place so we can have a nice environment, because that's really disgraceful.
Yes, I
And-
did
and
receive your
smelly.
pictures, and thank you.
Yes,
I
yeah.
need to sit down with Ross to look at options.
Yeah.
It's
Is it any possibility they can move to another place so we don't have to view it another few years? I
Right.
believe.
right, which was on your, that was on your,
That
on
was
your,
my
so
question.
it's literally, I went through all the pictures this morning, actually.
That's only few. I have much more, but
I have
don't
I have
want
plenty.
to load.
I get it, yeah.
So-
Let me just look at it with Ross. The reality is we're going to have construction, but we do have options. Let's look at what other options we have, okay? And I'm really sensitive to, and I recall your apartment number as well on the 4th floor, and I just, I'm sensitive to your view and what you have to look at, and then going to the parking lot. You're not alone. This challenge is in other ACTS communities as well. Construction used to be more lipstick and rouge, carpet and paint. Now there are renovations that are very, as you all know, very in-depth. So the volume of what we're removing, from the buildings is immense comparatively. But some of that is contracted. It's through the vendors we use. So we can also make sure they clean up on a timely fashion, which some of what you shared in your pictures tells me it's been sitting there a bit potentially. So, but I'll look at that with Ross. Thank you.
We do not have sufficient front desk coverage over the weekends. It's the security gate that picks up. We need someone at the front desk for more hours.
I thank you for your comment. Some communities actually have resident volunteers who also man the front desk. It would depend on the volume, what's being done. If the calls are being managed, the few calls that are coming in, managed at the security house, the welcome house, that's sufficient. But I know that you also have security that mans the desk at different hours, but we can look at the volume of the hours.
George, we need more people who are trained in Heimlich in the cafeteria and in bistro and in the dining room. When Dawn is not here, there is no one else who knows how to do it, and a resident is not going to be, able to do that. That's not legal. It would have to be somebody from the staff.
Well, I think it could be Good Samaritan would cover anybody. It's not a legality issue, it's a Good Samaritan. Somebody in one of my visits here, it was in December, shared that the Red Cross provides that training. And I don't remember who shared that with me, but I said, let's do it. I mean, we're not opposed to having the training. There was actually a note on the desk where there was an observation recently, I think someone choked in the dining room, which is a regular occurrence. So I don't know, Darren, you and I can talk. I don't know what other opportunities. I'm sure we have them, to be able to get training done on a regular basis. But Darren, make sure that's on our list this week to talk about, and we can look at that. But it's anyone that has the training or, is able to help too. And I'm not suggesting residents should have to, but I know some residents that you couldn't get out of their way, trying to help them at the same time. But Darren and I will look at that training. At the end of December, someone shared with me that the Red Cross does it. I don't recall if I reached out to Joanne Hartman, she is with ACTS Corporate University, to find out if there are other opportunities, but we can get training on site. The fire department. Yeah, if we had some programmatic approach because of the turnover, to like when the servers they have a stand-up before service, that there was some kind of training, that was regular, it would be optimal. And maybe even a train the trainer. I don't know if we have someone internally that's trained, they would be able to do the training. There, Barnabas is going to actually also reach out to the fire department. Thank you.
A point of information. About 6-7 years ago, we did have some of the residents help at the front desk. We had that went on for about 4 years, and it really stopped before about the COVID. The other thing is, for new employees, we have a seminar about every 4 or 5 weeks run by Susan Bradley, and she has a film, and we have one person from the residents who speaks to the new employees. just to let you know that we do have some programs that are going on right now.
Thank you for sharing. And that, the reality is the front desk, it's usually like, can you tell me where this is? Can you tell me where that is? Especially on a weekend, guests or visitors are coming. Where's the A building? Oh, it's over there. So that's why I think we have communities that have volunteers. Indian River West has a volunteer every day of the week, and they've been doing it for years. And they do it in like 1-hour segments or 2-hour segments. There are a lot of ways to do it, but that's why I said find out what those peak hours are, and optimally, instead of adding cost, which you're going to pay for, instead of adding cost, it's a great opportunity for volunteerism. Ellen and I were chatting while we should have been in here stretching. It would probably feel really good. We were out chatting while we were waiting for the meeting today, and she is actually working really hard to continue to enhance volunteer opportunities and recognition. So, and she's in the back of the room. So, Ellen, let's add that to the list of opportunities. We have another. Oh, I tried to call you. You were stretching. The question is about the jacuzzi at the A pool. So the jacuzzi is down at the A pool. A motor was installed in it 2 weeks ago and blew immediately. It blew the motor out. They installed a new motor. They haven't turned it on yet, and the vendor is non-responsive. So I talked to Ross this morning. I just said, is it an electrical issue? Let's get an electrician out here. We haven't paid for the service yet, but we do need to get it going. I did call and leave a message for you that I was working on it. I just got this note today, and I'll find out what we can do if we can find another vendor. The vendor was actually a second vendor that we worked through St. Andrews to also find. The other question was about Wi-Fi, and I called and left a message because I didn't know if you were saying it's on the ancillary fee schedule. When is it available? The enhanced services. I'm going to have Marcus contact you directly to let you know the specifics, okay? Because I know that you can. Okay, he will be. I mean, I don't know. The question's confusing. That's why I called. So I'd be happy we can talk afterwards to get the specifics.
A while back, I presented a suggestion to prior management, and I was told that we'll look into it. The suggestion was based on what I found at other communities like ours, visiting relatives and friends. And the communication to our residents with paper going in the elevator seems very, very antiquated. My suggestion was that they put a television in each elevator or outside the elevators, and so they could change it instantly from one location. And I don't know, and nobody ever got back to me, so, wasn't surprising. But is it possible that that has been looked into, or I was told they were looking into it, and we'll get back to you. Has that been looked into, and are you thinking about it, or is that non-feasible?
It's not being looked into. It is feasible. I think you and I talked about this. I have a days, yeah, we talked about this. It is feasible. I don't know that we have the technology in place. You think it's wireless and it should pick it up. I don't know how the power goes to the TV in the elevator, but I've seen TVs in elevators. So is Marty in the room? Marty, would you make a note for me to look into the details of how that works? I think it's ideal too. We're trying to reduce paper, and you think, wow, you're going to buy X many TVs, but how much paper is that? Paper is expensive, and we use a lot of it. But I think it's a good idea, and to take those postings out. But it has some technological challenges that don't seem insurmountable. I just don't know how it works. There's a program in K4 I know, does that sound familiar? Yes, but K4 expanded. K4 also, some residents have test piloted the K4 on their phone where you have the resident directory and other information. It sends that information out digitally. So I'm sharing that because somewhere we have the technology that would populate what you're looking for. You know, how the puzzle comes together, I don't know. But I'll have to check in with IT. It's above Marcus. This is more of a strategic kind of a thing. And I don't know if that's a package deal, like a hotel type. Yeah, I don't know.
I have one additional question, sorry. And my question is about the bracelets and our response that we get when something happens, particularly when it isn't a weekday during clinic hours. And this has happened to me with my husband, may he rest in peace. This has happened to a good friend of mine. We often feel that they're worthless. Why are we wearing these? Because we don't get a response, and we don't get a timely response. And sometimes things are not necessarily 911, but you do need some medical help.
Sure.
And I find that we're not getting the response that we came here for.
Sure. Well, let me start by saying that I would want you to be comfortable that your pendant, bracelet, that it's functioning. If anyone doubts their pendant or bracelet, if you doubt it, call down to the front desk and say, I would like to test my bracelet. Test it. No, but let's hear me out, please, because I was reading, I get reports. So I get there, and Susan sends me all the reports, and I can see incident reports where people say, and there was one over the weekend, they said, and the family was there, they said the pendant's not working. You know, well, they didn't press it, you know, or she didn't press it, nor did they ask her. So I hear oftentimes it's the pendant wasn't pressed. So that's step one, okay? That's step one. Make sure you're comfortable that your pendant's working. Test it. I know a lot of you have cell phones. You say, well, it works in my apartment. It doesn't work in XYZ. Go to XYZ and test it. Just let them know in advance. I'm testing my pendant from the gym. I'm testing my pendant from here, from there. But feel comfortable that you know how to use it, that you're comfortable pressing the button and it's working. The response is different. There is a report for that. I can run a report to show me how long it takes from the time the call runs to the response and that it's cleared. If they don't properly clear it, that's an issue. But that's something that's on my radar. It has been, and I'm watching closely. The incidents track with that, so it's like I can see a map, I can see an incident report, say someone fell, the pendant was pressed, there was no response. And then I can pull that report to show me if the pendant was pressed and how long before the nurse arrived, like received it. What we're working on too, and this will help immensely both at Edgewater and at St. Andrews, is this year we have training for security guards that will occur that will give them, I forget it's not EMT, it's EMR, I believe. So an EMT, emergency medical response, is the first level, and EMT is a second level. We'll pay for that as well. We even have a job code for paramedics, and we have some communities that have paramedics that work in the welcome house. So our goal is to make it so the respondent doesn't have to be the nurse, it can also be the guard. And so we have training that they're putting the training packages together now. It's gonna be hosted at the regional office. Indian River has already done it. All of their guards are trained with this. And they have to, whenever they hire a new guard, they have to give the training, so that's why we're doing the training again. But that's gonna help with the response, because like you say, it's not always an emergency. Oftentimes, though, I see a resident falling. Now, this is touching on another area. A resident falling. I know some residents exercise the opportunity to age in place and have help during the day. I see calls that are residents, and I've seen their response saying, you know, my aide's here during the day. Well, are they of a level that they really need to be in assisted living, or maybe they need 24-hour help? And I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but this building has residents in it that use that call system like a call light. And that's not what it's made for, and I see it all the time. So we need to find the balance between it's an emergency pendant for emergency response and, you know, I can't reach my water, or I have an issue and I can't do something. It's being used for both, and it takes our time, the same amount of time to respond to both. So, cry wolf, and it's not crying wolf, but you get the concept. You do that half the time, and it makes the responses, and this is not a defense for the staff, but it makes the responses to the emergencies really challenging. But we need to address weighing the right to age in place at your own expense. Okay, I elect to stay home with help. My family's engaged, I'll stay home with help. Well, is it 12 hours? Is it 8 hours? Is it 24 hours? But if you really need to have 24-hour help, then you need to pay for that, because emergency response is just that, and it works. To have the nurse respond to it from Oak Ridge Terrace on the weekends works. If they're not running around the building also taking care of red alerts that are not related to just general emergencies. And I see the reports. I see them. And they're different from other communities.
Hello, George. Regarding the TV in the elevators, that's fine if you're taking an elevator. For those that live on the ground floor, we don't have access to that. But to save money, we do have a TV system in here. It's called Channel 95. Why go through all that if we can put everything on 95? Okay? As far as going back to the choking, they do have things, they advertise it on TV. It's a simple instrument you can put over the person's face and push it, and it comes right out. I don't know, it's about $20 or so. It's cheap. You can look into that. And
Plumbers use them, I think.
And I would like to know, what is the name of your son?
Oh, Gregory. That's after my wife's dad. Yeah. So you remind me of something with regards to the Channel 95. So Channel 95, as you know, is analog. It's not digital. So when you do see a presentation, the quality is very poor, and it's a little box. It's not this full screen. And more, and this just isn't with us with Comcast, but cable providers are more and more, they're less willing to give a channel away. So it's becoming a challenge. Between the quality and also they don't, as you know well, there's an issue between the switchover, like when we do have presentations or something that we want to present. So this year, at some point this year, we're changing to a different technology, and I don't have all the answers to it, but I know some of you, through the pandemic, I could not always attend church. But my church has a website and a live web stream. I could go to that site and watch the service. And then if I missed it, I could go watch the service. That same type of program is what we're going to. So when we have live events, you'll be able to, you could do it from your phone. But also if TVs, there's a Fire Stick, it's called. So there are ways to make your TV where it receives that signal. If it's smart TV, it's really easier. You can have the app already downloaded, but we would assist with that. But it would help so that you have all that information available to you. I think what is being referred to is more like Ellen was sharing. I have an event on Thursday. I really want to pump up the knowledge, of this event for this ribbon cutting. Those are opportunities. And I go in, when I go in an elevator, my eyes are different. I'm not looking for what I can attend. I always look at what's outdated. And I'm plucking them. Yeah, I'm cleaning up. And then when they're empty, they're even more unsightly than when they have a piece of paper on them. So I hear what you're saying, and you're right. But there are opportunities for advertising. For on the first floor, though, the comment was outside of the elevator to also have a device.
Oh.
You're going to likely walk by it. Yes, ma'am.
This is important. This is very, very important. We are flirting with disaster here. I brought up the previous administration, and I gave them a solution. The county tells us they're going to give us a light. It won't work because you're too close to power line. But the answer is this, and I begged and I pleaded with our previous administration. What we should do is have a large sign, right turn only when you leave. All you have to do is go down about 35 yards and make a U-turn. But the whole intersection is a complete disaster, and there will be a major accident. As long as you have that sign saying right turn only, it will make a mammoth difference.
Thank you, Stu. The reality is, though, you put a right turn only sign, people are still going to turn left. It's the reality. I hear what you're saying, though. It could. So turn right. but I don't know that the county has ruled out the light. I heard there was going to be a light, then it went cold. Yeah, I hear it's active. Well, I hear that it's active. I heard there was going to be a light, and then the topic went cold. But we'll look into where we are with it. I don't know if Ross has details on that or not.
You were talking about the pendant and getting a response. One of the things that I learned through, I don't even know who told me, that you just can't press the pendant and let it go. You have to hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, and I don't know if people know that. Okay, I don't know. That's what I was told.
Ross is saying that's not correct. But that's what I was suggesting. If you haven't ever used it and you wonder, does this darn thing even work? Just call the front desk and run a test on it. If you've used it and it works from your apartment, but you don't think it works anywhere else, I would go somewhere else, call the front desk, and try it. But I'm just saying you could build your confidence in it and also practice. Say, now I know what this sounds like. You spend all the time avoiding pressing it. I stayed in a guest apartment one time, and it was at Azalea Trace, and don't know why I did it, but it was sitting right there. I was getting ready to get into the shower, and I was like, what is this pendant doing here? And I pressed it. I pressed it, and sure enough, security came to help me out, and I'm glad I wasn't quite in the shower yet. But if you haven't, I think most people avoid pressing it. You avoid it, you don't want to bump into it. So I would practice it, but just call the desk first. And just like Friday for guests, don't everybody do it at once when you leave here. Kind of spread it out a little bit. But at the same time, I can promise you that I'm scrutinizing the timing of responses. And also, I watch closely to I'll call them repeat. We have a lot of patterns of repeat residents that are using it, and they have day help, and they don't have evening help. So they're using it as a call light, and we've got to find the balance so that you who need it, when you need it, our team isn't over helping someone who really needs a higher level of care or additional care at their expense in their apartment as they've chosen. I'm going to take one more question and wrap things up.
I have a question about cognitive testing. Mandatory, the sales department, apparently it's not working in independent living.
So it was a statement, not a question.
Sorry.
Or it is mandatory. Was that a question?
What is the story behind cognitive testing?
Yeah, cognitive testing. We do a cognitive test. I can tell you it's not a pass or fail necessarily. And I'll tell you a story. I was the executive director at Indian River Estates. That was my home community. That's my example. And there was a different test at the time, and the top score on that test was a 21. And anyone below, like a 16 or below, that was considered challenging. And I had a prospective resident come meet with me. It was she and her daughter. And I call that the seeing eye daughter. So if a prospective resident can't come alone, it's a bit of a yellow flag. So if they have a son or a daughter that's talking, I've seen it many times. So they're doing the talking and kind of prompting mom and answering questions. So I've seen the red flags. This particular resident that I'm thinking about scored a 15. And that's right below that threshold, and that was a former test that we did, again, with the test top score of 21. The reality was, there's no one dementia. There's no one cognitive issue. There are a plethora of challenges. This particular resident had played cards regularly in the community, had 2 neighbors, one on either side of the apartment she was moving into, and her daughter lived locally. She moved in. She was fine. Could she or did she do her own finances? No, her daughter did that. But was she social? Absolutely. Did she thrive? She did. For years she thrived. And she kind of plateaued. She didn't dive. That's an example. I had another resident. It was a transfer from a community in the Carolinas. And they wanted to transfer this resident down. She said that she's wonderful. Her cognitive test, it was a different test, but similar kind of score in that 15 range. She had a cognitive test that was low. She was a volunteer that spent a lot of time in Willowbrook Court, and she went there every day to volunteer. But they painted the picture. In my mind, I knew right away she was kind of following the crumbs. and she didn't have any friends and no network. Her kids did not live in Vero Beach. They lived in South Florida. They were going to come up and visit her. And I got trumped on it, and they allowed her to transfer, nosedive. She had no support structure. She did not thrive. She got lost regularly, was just wandering the hallways, and didn't thrive. My point is, the test is not a pass or fail. There are it's an indicator. And there are a lot of things you look at. But when people do transfer, move, when you're moving, there's a potential for a cognitive shift with all the changes. So the distance of the move, is it across town, across state, across country? So many variables. So we do look at it as a barometer, but it's a difficult one. And we can't always, through all the experience and professional examples we've had, we don't always get it right. I see the hand of a very important person over here, Delia, who experiences.
I don't do the cognitive test. It is by our nurse practitioner.
Yes.
So I do at times feel our residents assume sales took the butt. We're just accepting anyone and everyone. We're not.
It's done by the clinicians.
It's a clinical test. And so there's a financial and a medical qualification before we can even go into contract. And that's for everyone. I'm sure every resident sitting here went through that. Just a clarification.
So the comment is, once a year the test is available to all residents. Can we make it mandatory? There would be no reason to make it mandatory. We do, like we professionally, we have meeting structure behind the scenes where we talk about you. We discuss residents that are in transition. Maybe they lost a loved one. They're just showing some signs of concern. Maybe their neighbors are shared concern. And then a nurse will go visit with that resident and may do a cognitive test, as a benchmark. But we do annually, there's an update of your files, and we, if you permit us to, we do a test. But we can't mandate it. You live independently. Once you move in, you're independent with a life care contract. You have rights and you have opportunities. You have benefits you could weigh. I would say you could even schedule to go down to the clinic if you would like to get one done. But we're not going to mandate, more than once a year. And the one that we do is part of a whole litany of tests. But it's a benchmark. And again, it's just a number. Often you can function very well. Some of the answers on those tests I would not do well with. I'm just, I may have some cognitive decline or I've plateaued. I'm not sure. But it is an indicator, and it's a barometer amongst other factors that are weighed in. And as I shared, the factors can vary. And I've seen, and through our experience, we've seen different red flags, for that transition. But it's not always a pass or fail. Sometimes it's really obvious, and it's really clear when someone just isn't appropriate for independent living. Other times it's really a challenge. And what you want any human being to do is to thrive in the move. And we've seen, unfortunately, sometimes they'll move, and that move is just enough to trigger, and a little confusion can set in. Sometimes that plateaus and it works itself out. Other times it's more challenging. A lot of detail. I had fun. I will publish the date for the next Ask the Director. We're going to try our best to stay on the schedule. As long as I'm not pulled away from a reason out of my control, that's my goal. And then also we'll announce the town hall date. We'll look at the calendar, make sure it's a date that doesn't interrupt with anything that you have in place, such as the book club. I've stepped on the book club a few times with my great apologies in advance. But yeah, we won't do. I really just don't want to make wake. We'll find a date that works. If you want to see a picture of my little boy, I'd be happy to share with you. But I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much.